Welcome back to the show where we talk with real pros in landscaping, tree service, and lawn care, the ones that are actually building strong local businesses the right way. I'm Matt Penchuk, co-founder of Search Strategy Marketing, and here again with my friend and co-host Anthony Hilb, owner of Anthony's Lawn Care and Landscaping in Bloomington, Indiana. And in the last episode, we dove into team building, how Anthony built a strong crew, incentivized his people, and learned what really works to keep good employees. And today we're getting into something every growing company faces: structure. We face it. Anthony's faced it. What roles should you hire first? What changes as you grow from 100,000 to 500,000, and then from 1 million to 2 million? And when is it time to stop working in the business and start working on it? And so I figured we would jump into that. So Anthony, you've been there. You've gone through this. What does your business need from 0 to 500,000? We've talked about the van. It sounds like there's a lot of grit, but what should you be doing at this stage?
So from 0 to 500,000, we were at that range. Well, I mean, obviously we're at that range in the earlier days. And then when we really got serious about it, I mean, we first started in 2011. I worked a corporate job for a couple of years, and this was more of a side business. And that was for about 2 years. So from about 2011 to 2014, that happened. And then about April, I think it was September or October of 2014 is when I started working some corporate jobs. And then I stopped doing that by April of 2016 and went full force with this. And we were from 0 to 500,000 from 2016 until the end of 2019. So 2019, we hit about 500,000. And there was a moment probably after the summer of 2017 where I said, I'm never hiring anyone ever again, no matter what. Because I had a couple of high school kids, and to be fair, I've had high school kids who do absolutely phenomenal work, and they're very hard workers. But in this case, I had a couple of high school kids in 2017, and it didn't go so well. So I said, I'll just do everything myself. And we were actually offering every service at this point. So I was offering lawn mowing, landscaping. So I would mow lawns for a little bit in the morning until the afternoon. Maybe I'd go either start or work on or finish a landscape job. And then during the evenings, I would go out and do tree work. So yeah, I did that from August all the way until August of 2017 until February of 2018. And then we hired 3 more people for that spring season. Actually, it was 4 more people at one time. And they fortunately were good. And we noticed that the more people we hired, if they're good, the more the business would make. And so that season we scaled up to 5 or 6 employees. And I was still in the field though, and working in the business probably 80% of the time. Well, really, I was working in the business definitely for 60, 70, maybe 80 hours a week. And then during the evenings, I would do invoicing, and I was still answering calls too. Yeah. So from 0 to 500,000, I think that's a scenario where the owner wears many, many hats, where they're still, because sometimes you don't really have the money to have someone answer the phone. In 2019, we did start using a call center, and we might have been a little bit in 2018, and that's what we could afford. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the money yet to pay someone a salary to answer the phone all day, and we probably only had 4 estimates scheduled per day. It's not like it is now, and I would go do those. So I would, at one point, one of our guys talked me into having a driver. That way I could answer the phone, texts, and emails. And that was in 2019. And that actually really moved the needle, even though it was counterintuitive. I thought, why should I have someone drive with me for estimates? But while they were driving, I still taught them how to do estimates as well. Right. So it was a training opportunity, and then I could answer the calls coming in and answer emails from my smartphone.
Did you sit in the front seat or the back seat?
No, I sit in the front seat, not being chauffeured, but no office staff at all.
Okay.
I answered all the texts, emails, phone calls, and I personally did every estimate and worked in the field all at the same time. So I might do 2-3 estimates a day and then mow some lawns, I did a lot of our tree work back then. From 2016 until maybe early 2019, I personally climbed the trees, got up in the bucket truck, whatever. Actually, we didn't have a bucket truck, so I rented a lift. And I would be the one that went up and did all that. Sometimes, maybe for 3 jobs in that time span, we subcontracted to other tree companies and worked with them. But it's just one of those scenarios where when it comes to staffing, as the owner, unless you have a lot of money to start the business, if you start the business with an inheritance or something, and you can hire an office staff right off the bat, that's kind of okay. But at the same time, the business itself probably still isn't really turning a profit. You're just throwing more money at it at that point, I believe, because the mathematics don't really make sense if you're scaling. Now, if you're in the lawn and landscape industry, one of the really cool things about it is that you can stay really small and basically do everything. And you might just need a part-time helper or one full-time employee. And if you kind of stop there, you can still make decent money as basically a solopreneur or just with a very small team and never even get to the point where you hire office staff or anything like that. Or, because if you build up to 100 lawns and you do most of them in a week, you'll still make good money on your own. But if you're in the scaling phase where you're hiring people, for example, if you're the one mowing most of those lawns with a part-time, maybe even a full-time helper, you can still make 50, 60 grand a year. Mm-hmm. And if your partner, or maybe you live with a family member or whatever, you have someone helping with the bills, you can still live. I've seen guys live a really nice life doing that. They live modestly and, they can do that. They can pick up other side jobs for the clients if the clients need something hauled away or anything like that.
Let me ask you about that stage.
Yeah.
So it sounds pretty stressful to be doing it all yourself constantly.
Yeah.
There's no break in there. And then you got burnout.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, what
if you get sick, you're behind schedule.
Yeah. So,
you don't have backups. So it's a tough scenario.
You're making some money. You don't have employees. You're not stuck. Or you maybe have a couple, half part-time or one or two, but you have yourself in a position where there's a lot of risk. It sounds like there's a lot of risk. It is. And then, so what's the common trap people do to try or find themselves in when they are in this position? What's the choices they make, and what are the pitfalls of those choices? So, for example, you're like, all right, I'm burning the candle at both ends. I'm sure your back starts to hurt. These are all challenges. What are the mistakes that people make? Is it they start overhiring? What are the pitfalls? So tell me what the mistakes are, and you probably made them because it sounds like you've done them all, which is one of the keys to success. So tell me what you've done.
Yeah, it's if you get sick and don't mow all the lawns that week, a lot of clients are upset. If you're sick and don't answer the phone, and people have certain deadlines that they like to hit for. Maybe they have a family get-together, graduation party, Memorial Day barbecue, whatever it might be, and people will get upset. And I've noticed in this industry, we've had people more upset because we're a couple days behind on mowing than people who have a tree laying on their house. People are very picky about mowing.
Right.
So that's been our experience. I'm not saying that's universal, but
right.
There was a time when I was sick in 2017, and I went on vacation once in 2017. So what I did was, and this could be a pitfall because you asked about pitfalls. It wasn't for me. I was lucky in this regard, but I made friends with another small lawn care company that was owner operated, solopreneur, and I pretty much was too. And if he needed to go on vacation, I'd mow his lawns. He would subcontract to me. If I needed to go on vacation or I was sick or something, I subcontracted to him. And he never tried to steal any of my clients. I never tried to steal any of his. One of the potential pitfalls, though, if you do hire a subcontractor to mow the lawns or help with some of the trees or whatever, is they'll try to take your clients. And I've kind of had that happen one time, but not really, because that subcontractor did work that we weren't able to do because he had a big machine, or has a big machine that basically takes out all of the brush and like sapling trees in a whole. I mean, he probably did this in a 30 acres worth, and they started just to go directly through him, which wasn't really a big deal because they wanted to turn everything he ground out into grass. So then we got hired for all that he just did anyway. So it still worked out. But there are scenarios where subcontractors may try to take your lawns you're subcontracting to them, or other jobs, and it's important to have a good contract in place for that, like a non-solicitation agreement or something along those lines, so it reduces the chances of subcontractors taking your accounts. And it's just really important to have, if you can afford to have some backups, like maybe the part-time person you hire also has a valid license and a good driving record, and they could take over. Like maybe you have one full-time person that helps you and then one part-time, and maybe the part-time person's flexible and can work full-time with the other full-time person you have in an event where you're sick or something. And this keeps going. No matter how big we are, it's always been important to have backups, and cross-training. That way we don't have bottlenecks. Because if it comes down to just one person and something happens to that one person, the whole company can suffer and your customer service can really plummet there.
So, but tell me about in the 0 to 500,000 phase. If you overhire, you're just getting, your bottom line's getting hit. You're having struggles to pay.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you overhire, that's actually one of the number one reasons small businesses go out of business. I was taking a class at an executive course through Wharton, and they said even the bigger businesses that are like tech startups, one of the top reasons they go out of business is because they hire too many admin staff too early. And that's where I say the piece about grit, because especially if you're younger, if you're in your 20s or early 30s, sometimes just in your 30s in general, you probably have the stamina, or you have a higher chance of having the stamina to do it all for a little while. And I've seen other people do that too. We had a restaurant owner near us when I was growing up, and the owner did everything from bussing tables, serving. Like, he was just like the only guy there at the restaurant for probably 3 years. But as time went on, he had a staff of like 15 people there after 7 to 10 years. And we started going to that restaurant right when it opened, so we saw the whole thing as I was a kid. And that was a talking point with my parents. My dad would say, see, that's how businesses start a lot of times, where the owner's not afraid to work 80 to 100 hours a week. Not saying that's what has to happen. It's just one of the options. So one of the options is to do it all yourself for as long as you can.
Yeah.
In that phase. And it's tough because you either have to have a lot of capital. Like, let's say someone inherits 500,000 or $1 million. You can shoulder those times, and you can probably hire more admin staff. It's just coming out of your pocket more. So you're either going to invest sweat equity, like your own time, or you're going to invest your own money until it gets past that 500,000 mark. And then you have to have this discussion with the employees that the amount of tasks that you're going to do is going to increase. And so will your pay. But it's And the staff has to be willing to do multiple things too.
Right. You're going to wear many hats now. They're not going to ever be as invested as you are. But
unless you make it worth it for them somehow. But
true. Yeah. But it's hard. But to get them to maybe, if you can get them 80% of the way there, that's still pretty good. You want people who are that dedicated and excited about it and encouraged.
Yeah.
So we're finding that. Okay, so you talked about a bunch of the different people that you might hire. I think we talked a little bit about some of the common traps, overhiring. So, okay, let's eke over $500,000. We're excited. We hit $500,000 to $1 million. What now? What changes?
At that point, we hired a full-time person to answer every call. And This was a funny mistake we made. It's a blinding flash of obviousness. I don't even think anyone else would make this mistake, but you never know. Our lady who's answering every call, she's local. She answered every single call and email that came in. We started using her number, and it's a company phone that we bought, of course. So we started using the number that she had that's listed on our website and in all of our ads. So that was really huge, and that really moved the needle a lot, because when it comes to customer service, someone who actually answers the phone or returns voicemails, and not only voicemails, what if they don't leave a voicemail? So if she saw that she missed a call and didn't get a voicemail, she's calling right back I would say within 5 to 10 minutes, just really diligent.
Sure.
And so, once that happened, we started getting more clients, and we went from 500,000 to $1 million in 1 year. And that was one of the main things we did that year. So
to
it
have
was
that
exciting.
happen. So
and we could afford it.
Right.
At that point,
okay, so then what happened with the rest of the business? So that's the admin. Did you hire another crew leader, or did you an estimator? Are you still wearing every hat at this point? Or have you given some of the hats away, or you take them off periodically?
Yeah, it's partial. It's becoming more blended at that point. So I actually spent that whole year training one estimator during the spring and summer, and he developed the ability to go out on his own. And this is the summer of 2019. And then so when 2020 rolled around, 2020 was when we doubled the business again, because we doubled it like 4 years in a row. And like you're saying, it does come with different, like what you did at this level isn't what you do at the next level. So in 2019, I trained him. In 2020, he went on his own. And in 2020, I trained the second estimator and a third estimator later in 2020. So going into 2021, we have 3 estimators who know our numbers and know how to go out and do bids without me. I think 2021 was the first time I experienced working on the business rather than, well, I had always worked on and in the business. It's blending both. Right. But there were moments in time where I could go 3 months of really just working on the bigger picture. And we had 3 estimators out there. And the estimates they were sending were accurate. Like the numbers were correct. Their sales numbers were good. They were hitting the targets that we had at that time. It was amazing. It was one of those situations where the stars align in the best way, where nearly every employee we have is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that is a situation in business too, is the exact opposite could have happened, where all 3 of those guys are giving bad numbers. They have low sales numbers. The lady who's answering our phone is letting it go to voicemail, not responding until the next day, no follow-up. And that would be a scenario with all those people not doing what they're supposed to do. You run out of money. The bigger you get, the quicker you run out of money scenario. It's like marketing. If you could have all the phone calls and everything in the world, but if you don't have a good sales professional that can convert those leads into clients, it's not the marketing company's fault. It's not the marketing in that scenario. It's a sales problem. And I studied every sales course I could get my hands on, starting in February of 2018. I took a lot of sales training courses. Even today, I think we're going to sign up for Sandler sales training to get Sandler certified. And it's not something that just goes away. It's something that you have to constantly be working on when it comes to sales and marketing. I mean, you know it. Google's changing the algorithm all the time.
Right.
But I signed up for sales training courses and would have our estimators, do 1 or 2 modules every morning to kind of freshen up. We'd have a sales meeting. I was lucky enough to have good marketing that was converting. And so there was a scenario where I could travel or go see family, or, I think we took I don't think we took too much of a vacation that year, but we did travel to see family a few times, whereas before that it was harder to do that. And then there were scenarios where they would do better than me. They would book more work than I would. I've never had that happen for long periods of time, probably for more than 3 to 6 months. But I have noticed times where our estimators would book more than I would have for periods of 3 to 6 months. And then sometimes they'll go into a slump or whatever it is. But at that point, as long as you get the good employees, and that's the key. I think Brian Tracy says that a lot. He always says, 80 to 90% of your results in business, if you're growing your company and hiring people, are the people you have. So
Mm-hmm.
we are really, really blessed to get great people. And that happened for a few years where basically everyone we were hiring was really good. Now we had to let some people go along the way too. And that's the other challenging part is letting the people who don't perform well go and keeping the people and promoting the people who do perform well. I think that's a huge challenge. And it still is to this day for us. We don't like to let people go. It's a very challenging thing and people get really mad and everything else. But you have to be able to do it because when we look back, when I sit down with our managers and we look back and talk about, what if we would have kept all those people that we let go? What would the business be like? It's like, oh man, we wouldn't have been able to keep growing because there would have been too many upset clients. So that's a big one is retaining the really good performers and promoting the really good performers and letting go of the people who get caught sleeping in the truck or whatever it might be.
We just talked about that
Yeah.
before the show, about letting go of those people who are not performing and the appearances of doing the work, not really doing the work. And so that's
Yeah.
going to have a detrimental effect on your business. And it really is important to make those calls quickly, to make the decision, even if it's uncomfortable, because it's like dead weight on you and
Yeah.
it'll drown you.
It's an awkward conversation to have too.
Mm-hmm. The costs are everywhere. It's not just in the performance. It's not just in the results for your clients or customers. It's also your own emotional and spiritual well-being in those moments because you're trying to swim with a bunch of dead weight hanging on you. It's very challenging, and so it really is important to make those calls quickly. I think that's been our experience. And feeling bad about it is one thing. You don't want to be harsh. They're still human beings, but you also have to give people let them handle their own business. And so if you let somebody go, they're going to have to figure that out for themselves. There's plenty of opportunities out there, but the business can't shoulder that.
Yeah, and I've always been good about giving people multiple chances, and I've even hired guys back. I've probably made every mistake in the book when it comes to hiring and managing, but I've always managed by the numbers. And since I've done every job in the field that we do, I know how long jobs should take. So if I do a bid or one of our guys does a bid and we know how long it should take and the skill level required. Now, on the other hand, if we're training someone and they're doing a harder landscape kind of project and they haven't done it a lot, we know there's a cost of doing business there. And we don't fault them for not meeting a timeline because they're in training and they're learning. Right. And that's okay, but that can only go on for so long as well. And there have been people we've hired that don't hit the timeline 50% of the time, and they're skilled landscapers and they know what they're doing. And when you go in to check up on a job site, they're sitting in the truck, and they're the only crew that's not hitting their timeline 50% of the time, and every other crew is hitting their timeline 87% or 93% of the time, you have a problem there.
Yeah.
And so I've had scenarios like that where I can look at the numbers. I don't have to physically be at the job site, but we do have to determine, was it because the estimate was low? Well, our estimates with all the other teams or other crews, our estimates are generally right 87 to 93% of the time. So, if 7% of the time any given crew isn't hitting their number, we know it's because the estimate was too low and we overlooked something. We overlooked, that the soil in this particular area is actually clay and it's really hard to dig through. So it's taking 3 times longer. That's on the estimators. That's okay. We understand. But we still have to do the job anyway. So we might have to get, a machine to dig the holes for the planting and like an auger or something like along those lines on a mini skid steer. We can't expect people to just shovel through clay that feels like concrete.
Yeah.
Or pickaxe it. Just takes forever. Yeah. What's that?
So come to my front yard. That's what we have here. Built these track homes. They just fill it with dirt. There's no soil. It's terrible.
So, I'm not always quick to just let someone go. I still like to diagnose it and see Well, is it the estimates? Is it maybe they don't get along with maybe the two team members don't get along well? So you could do personality tests and things like that. We can generally kind of tell who's going to get along and who won't, but we're not always right. And sometimes just switching crew members
Yeah.
can make a huge difference.
Did you do this in this 500 to $1 million? Was this sort of the testing ground of these kinds of situations?
Yeah, because we just didn't know for sure.
Yeah.
I read Perry Marshall's book, Detox, Declutter, Dominate. Very good book. It's a short read too. But he calls these things, and I don't think it's always literally, but it's basically he'll call certain tasks $10 an hour tasks or $100 an hour tasks. But he put answering live calls from interested clients, I think at $100 an hour or even $1,000 an hour work, depending on the industry. For example, for us, someone might have a $5,000 or $10,000 tree or landscape job. And if we answer the phone, a real human answers the phone after the second ring, that could be a kind of in a roundabout way, $1,000 an hour task. It's not literally, obviously, kind of, but that could be a $500 profit job. And the person answering the phone right away and scheduling the estimate right away, that's a very important role. So I was willing to pay the people who answered our calls a little bit more and work with them more and develop that customer service a lot more with that information. So I strongly recommend that book for figuring out who should do what tasks are the most important, what should the owner prioritize. A lot of times the owner going out and doing estimates is still a high level task, but you're still working in the business in a lot of ways in that scenario. Not entirely, but I think a lot of owners have that trouble getting away from doing sales and estimates because when it's your company, the customers respond to the owner better. But like I said, I've experimented with that and I've seen scenarios where estimators will actually hit even higher numbers than I would. And going back to what I was talking about I didn't conclude that thought with our office manager answering the phone. She would send it to me and the other estimators, and we would schedule a day and time. So for that person's estimate, that's what I was saying earlier. I don't think anyone would ever really do that, but we didn't have 10 estimate scheduling or 20 estimate scheduling per day back in those days. So then that way we could design our own schedule as estimators, but we realized that there was more of a lag time. It's better to have someone answer the phone and schedule the estimate right away on the same conversation rather than saying, oh, well, John, okay, thanks for calling. John's going to get back in touch with you to schedule you for the estimate. But John's also busy doing estimates all day that day. And maybe he doesn't get back to that person for 3 days. And by then, they've already scheduled an estimate with another company. And that other company has the job now. So that was one of those blinding flashes of obviousness that we handled where our office manager schedules the day and time for the estimate on the spot rather than waiting for another person to call.
It's always easier to shift the time later on if you need to than to not have it on the calendar at all.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have all these little things like that happen. So.
Oh yeah. So, but you fumble your way through. It sounds like 0 to 500 for you is just to grin and bear it, get through it, get to it, just claw your way to 500. 500 to 1 million sounds like a lot of active stumbling and.
There's a lot of risks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you get those hires wrong, that could put you out of business. That's the other thing. If you don't get good hires at that point in time to answer the phone, to do the jobs, the customer service, the estimators, if the estimators' numbers are always wrong and the office manager's never answering the phone right away, like you could just lose everything in that scenario and you would have been better off staying at around 500.
Right. Yeah. Watch your Google reviews take a dive while you're scaling. Okay, so now we hit 1 million. We're getting the 1 million to 2 million. Just give me 3 bullet points as to what happens here. What do you do? What's the step? Who are you hiring? What systems are you putting into place? What's changed with your internal communications or even external?
It's just, at that point, it's still just building off of what you had. At that point, it's harder between 500,000, between 0 and 500,000. As the owner, you can still do the majority of the estimates. You have the time because you don't have too many estimates scheduled each day. So you have the time to show that you have a job in person and explain to them what's going on. So you're not playing the game of telephone. Between 500,000 and a million, that starts to shift a little bit. And you just send the crew to go do the job with a work order. But I've noticed in that scenario, it's much better to have a policy in place that they have to meet with the client so the client can go over it with them, which can also pose negativity, it can be a negative outcome where the customer, with the game of telephone, adds things to the work order that weren't supposed to be there. So you have to be careful of that. What's that?
The scope creep.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So there's that to watch out for. And so you have to start writing your estimates in a much more detailed way. At that point, between 1 and 2 million, we had to say what everything includes and does not include. And our estimates just got way longer than take down tree. Like, we will take down the tree and haul it away and maybe remove the stump. But saying remove the stump is a bad word track because stumps can go 5 feet to 7 feet deep. And the customer can get you on a technicality there where you can lose thousands of dollars. So you have to be really careful about the word tracks if you're sending work orders to crew leaders, because once you have 5-6 crews, it's hard to meet with every single crew at every single job site. So you have to be extremely specific about what each job includes and does not include, and setting the right expectations for the clients and for the crew doing the work. And so they understand that what they're supposed to do and not do. Like, that way, if the client says, well, I thought including this, and it says this does not include, then we know they need another estimate for it. So don't go do it. Don't just go do that. Don't just do anything they say, because that's if they get you to do all these extra things, that's a potential area where you can lose money, and that's not good at all. So that can be an issue. And again, really trusting the crew leaders to do what they're supposed to do, because you're not able to check in on every job site all day at that point. I mean, you might even need a supervisor.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask you, do you hire a supervisor to manage the crew leaders at that point?
Yeah, you can. It's a little shaky, but that's about the area where you have someone driving around to all the job sites, and that person should jump in and help too, not just watch. Like, this phase in the business isn't where you have supervisors who just drive by, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do and then just drive away. No, they drive to the job site, they help for a couple hours and maybe even do some training. Then they go to the next job site and do the same thing.
Okay.
And there's areas in these, because you said 3 bullet points. It's the crew leaders, like the estimates need to be totally dialed in. The other thing is the supervisors need to help. And you should probably only have one supervisor at this point. And they need to be willing to physically help at each job site. And then after that, you need to do a quality control check as part of your policies and procedures with every single client. That should be a part of your SOPs, is that the client has to be checked in person and go over everything with them in person to make sure it's up to their standards. That way you have the chance to fix anything that may be incorrect, as opposed to they turn in the job as complete, you send the invoice, like, wait a second, they missed 2 things on the estimate, and then the client can think, you're trying to rip them off or something. So I always let clients know the job's not done until you sign off on everything. If you're not home when our crew finishes and they leave and you receive an invoice, please don't pay for that. Give us a chance to come over and make, tidy up further or make any corrections. That way you don't run into an upset client. Oh, I got the invoice and it's not even done, or anything like that. They need to have a chance to be able to get it done to their standards or how we agreed to do the job. So that's an important thing to let clients know. So I'd say setting the right expectations with clients and doing that walk around. So I would say like writing the estimates in a way that crew leaders can tell what's included, not included, and yeah.
So it sounds like from in the 500 to 1 million range, you're starting to put some policies and procedures, some standard operating procedures in there, but they're still loose. There's still some flex in those. You're still running a little bit in that mom and pop type environment. Now, from 1 million to 2 million, is there's a standardization. What happens? Do you feel like there's a drop off in the personal attention that maybe you used to give as the owner operator, being out there doing estimates? Do you feel like it becomes cold? Because we oftentimes I'll talk to small landscaping or tree service company, and we have some, and one of the things they really want is that personal attention. They're like, hey, I went to this enormous company and I have to sit on hold to talk to somebody, and I have to repeat myself about what I need. How do you handle that size, that growth, and then becoming impersonal in that process?
Yeah, if I'm not involved in that scenario, again, the right SOPs have to be in place. That way, because you have to systemize everything you do. So if you've noticed what's worked, when you are the one out there doing it, when you are the one scheduling, you figure out what clients like and what they do not like. And then you have to train, almost like a franchise, you have to train everyone who does all of those jobs to do exactly the things that you've noticed that work, and then to expand on that and collaborate as well. Because they're going to notice things that maybe you didn't to increase customer service, and then your team members will bring it up to you. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's do that. But like the 3 bullet points I mentioned from 1 million to 2 million, another thing for step number 1, which is crew leaders need to know exactly what's included and exactly what's not, as well as clients. You could have the supervisor do the walk around with the client and the crew that's going to be there before the job starts. And then if the crew leader is there when they finish the job and the client is not, the supervisor can still go do that quality control. But crew leaders need to know what to do and what not to do. Number 2, you have at least one supervisor. Number 3, quality control. Because as the owner, it's easy as the owner to do all those things between 0 and 1 million. I mean, it increasingly gets more difficult. But as the owner between 0 and 500,000, you have time to do that. But then you have to hire someone else to do that. And so you just have to replicate the procedures or the policies over and over and over from the things that that work, and then expand upon that and collaborate with your team and with the clients. It's about knowing what they want and providing that.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey, indeed. Well, I think, that's exceptional. I'm glad that you've gone through that. You're still here standing on the other side. You don't have too much gray hair as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit there, but...
Well, that's good. That's good. It's healthy. And you've shared a lot. And I think we're going to try, as we've talked about, getting some more people who are in these different stages and talk to them about where they are and just kind of help diagnose, understand where some of their challenges are, both from a marketing perspective, which is where our ballpark here, but just you and your operations. And I think that's really helpful. So thank you for sharing that. I was wondering, you're talking about working on and in the business, like how hard is it to let go of that? All the things that you had done from 0 to 5, 5 to 1, 1 to 2. How hard is it to let go of being in the business? Because I think there's a lot of guys who are just like, hey, I just love being outside. I spend a lot of time in front of a computer. I'd like to be outside a little bit more. How do you let go of that, and how do you handle just the change in your job duties?
It's extremely difficult. I didn't want to be the one. I didn't want to stop answering the calls because I've always liked answering calls and providing that customer service. It's a lot easier if the core group of employees you have sticks with you for long periods of time. If you have very high turnover and you don't keep the same office manager year after year, because there's a compounding effect that happens. When you find really, really good people, pay them well, give them a certain degree of freedom, let them learn from their own mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, to answer your last question a little bit more, there are scenarios where, as the owner, you will hire someone better than you at mowing lawns, way better than you, but the client developed a relationship with you when you were the one mowing the lawns. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want this person at my house, I want you. That happened to me all the time. I said, well, that person does a better job than me. I don't care. I want you here. So there is some attrition with clients. Like, you do lose some clients along the way of growth, and you're asking how hard it is to let go. It's extremely hard, because if you've had a client that you've loved for 3 to 5 years or whatever it is, and they don't want to go with you anymore because you're not the one mowing the lawn, sometimes that's a sacrifice you have to take in order to grow, even though it is painful and you really don't want to. And I don't know if it's a wrong or right type scenario. I think there's gray area there as well, because I think there's some owners that just never get out, and they like their life and they're happy with what they make, and they stay at that level for the rest of their career. And I think that's okay too, because clients, you're probably more likely to have clients renew with you for much longer if it's always you doing it.
Yeah.
Because they really build a relationship with you over time. But then it's harder to scale. You get stuck at 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever, basically for the next 30 years. And that was never my goal. I always wanted to build a bigger operation, you know, and be in different cities and be in different states and really go for it. But that doesn't mean I think the people who stay at a lower 100,000 or 200,000 level are necessarily wrong. But as you pointed out earlier, it can lead to burnout, and you know, you could still lose clients in that way too, because you don't have backup staff for them if something happens to you.
Right.
So there's a fine line there. Definitely. It can be really hard to let go.
Yeah. This is so interesting. I love hearing about it from, you know, you're clearly out there with a larger staff and service team, but there are certainly parallels to what we're experiencing. So, yeah, this is great. Thank you. I think next time we'll probably want to kind of wrap up the Anthony's Lawn Care. You know, maybe we'll just do like a best practices, you know, just we'll talk about maybe some SOPs that you think are important, some automations, maybe necessary trainings, and really how you can stop being the bottleneck. You know, we never want to think about that we're the bottleneck, but when the business doesn't care how you feel about it, the business has got to operate, right? So we need to figure out how to remove ourselves from being the bottleneck and identifying ourselves as the bottleneck. And so let's talk about that. It's Saturday. I've been wearing my bluey shirt, you know, Saturday morning cartoons. But
Love it.
On Monday, we'll talk about that and figure out, you know, what that really looks like. And then we can start getting some folks in here who we can chat with and see what they think and learn about their business, what's worked for them, what maybe they're struggling with. And this is always, as always, Anthony, it's good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt. Great seeing you today, and I'm looking forward to next time.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Take care.